How is spiritual states are unavoidable, even to people who claim that they don't suffer from any kind of religiosity or who claim to be complete atheists who don't believe in any of that kind of thing. The proof of the pudding is things such as the science is settled crowd behind the climate change stuff. Recently, Greta Thunberg's mother announced that she was able to see carbon dioxide in the air. She had the gift of a seer and had the special gift to be able to see CO2, an invisible gas. The Swedish church declared her the successor to Jesus Christ. Now, you would think that it's science motherfuckers or the science is settled crowd would be the first to jump on this and say, do not be comparing this to the scientific facts that prove that man-made climate change is a fact. They do the very opposite. They are actually jumping for joy. So much so that a friend of mine sent me a link this morning of her arriving as a god in New York as a video on Facebook. And the people who are writing, same people who are writing The Science is Settled, She's Saving the Planet, and have all links to like Brian Cox and Richard Dawkins, are comparing her to the new Joan of Arc. They're actually comparing her to Joan of Arc because she has the gift to see carbon dioxide. Now, this is a very worrying thing, because if you see any other society that was atheistic or any atheistic movement that applied a religiosity to science, they were usually totalitarians. The Third Reich did this. The Bolsheviks in Russia did this. The Maoists in China did this. The Pol Pot Khmer Rouge regime in Cambodia did this. And you have things such as cosmism, which was the belief that although there was no such thing as a god or any kind of spirituality or spiritual states on this planet, spiritual states could be achieved by communicating with lost ancestors in other planets in space by means of rocket travel, rockets to the stars, rocket to the planets. This is not a joke. This is real. This is what they actually were saying in the Soviet Union. There was no such thing as a spiritual state unless you got into a rocket and flew into space or used radio telescopes to communicate in space. They turned space into a god rather than a god into a god. Now, and then claim that the only means to access it is science. And of course, like, I see so much of the things that have developed by science to be somewhat magical, actually very magical, because everything is ultimately rooted in imagination. You look at things like quantum physics, and the two things that the reductionist scientists absolutely despise, quantum physics and consciousness. They're both the domain, the realm of the possible, and the furnisher of the impossible. And it's not surprising that this has happened, because these are the same people who go into stadiums to watch the likes of Brian Cox and Bill Nye present what are ostensibly sermons, and they sit there staring at the stage, and they might as well be at a Greek mystery play, and part of a Dionysian cult. It's the same thing. They're spellbound. They're spellbound by science because it's presented in a format of religiosity. I don't care if you're an atheist. I don't care if you worship a god, or you just consider yourself spiritual. That's okay, but don't be denying the fact that you believe in something, especially you cannot call yourself a scientific reductionist while not having a problem with the Church of Sweden comparing Greta Thunberg to the descendant of Jesus Christ and to the inheritor of the Jesus Christ legacy, and also people calling her the new Joan of Arc because she can see carbon in the air. You're not in charge of your own cognition. You're reacting in a cult-like manner. You have been controlled. Now, I would have all the respect in the world for anyone who is, a reductionist atheistic person to come up and say, this stuff of Greta Thunberg being able to see CO2 and being the descendant of, or the heir of Jesus Christ's throne on earth, it has to be stopped immediately. It's making us all look crazy. But they're not doing that. In fact, they're doing the opposite. They're embracing it. They're absolutely embracing it. And that's That's a disturbing trend because we've now created what is a doomsday cult for real. All the one aspect that was missing in the whole man-made global warming, climate change debate was a spiritual figure at the center of it. They tried it years ago with that Rothschild fella who looked like Jesus Christ, and they didn't pull it off because his name was Rothschild, and people were all, even like, the most bland, ordinary TV news people were aware that this guy is probably doing something on behalf of his banking family. And then they tried it with Russell Brand, but then he was doing things like going out with Jemima Khan, who of the Goldsmith Rothschild family, banking families, while denouncing banking at the same time, and living in multiple luxury homes by saying the rest of us should go into the Venus Project. And they always fucked up. A 16-year-old child with Asperger's cannot be attacked. So they, like in the other video I made about the cult of Greta or whatever it is, they have created a figure that represents purity. Now it's very important too that she's been picked from Sweden. We have been told for about a decade now that the greatest place on earth is Scandinavia. I can tell you for a fact it's a shithole. It may be a pristine shithole, but it's basically all those countries are glorified life support systems. And what life is there is what they measure happiness by, is by people being not miserable. It's not that they're saying, "Are you happy? Are you the happiest people in the world?" They're saying, "We're not miserable." Now, these countries up until the late 1980s were ravaged by massive levels of alcoholism. A lot of this had to do with their latitude up on the top of Europe and the long winters causing a lot of depression. They didn't cure the alcoholism. They replaced it with psych meds. And it was seen as a glorious thing for the elites that they did this. And this is an important thing that this has happened. That we have a Scandinavian savior coming forth to present a message of religious salvation for people who don't believe in religion. Now, I don't care what they believe, but it's just further proof that you cannot run away from spiritual states. They are there and they're part of the human existence, and even the atheists and reductionists fall into the same thing.